Welcome to Every Child Belongs. Today, I'm so happy to have my friend Ashley Meier Barlow joining us. And in this podcast, we want every child to belong. So we're talking to a whole bunch of different kinds of people to see maybe strategies that we should be doing, things that we should be thinking about. And Ashley and I met for coffee a couple months ago. And Ashley, you said so many things. I mean, at some points I would even say, please stop talking so I can just write this down. Remember, I did. And
yes,
I want
you did.
more people to hear some of the things you have to say. But before we get started, I want to tell people they don't know you like I do. So Ashley is a special education and estate planning attorney in Kentucky. And she's also the owner of the Collaborative IEP, which is a digital company designed to empower and inspire parents and advocates in special education. And you guys follow her on Instagram, or you can go to her website, the Collaborative IEP, for all kinds of tips and tricks and just how you can better advocate for your kid. She's also been involved in just a whole bunch of things. Ashley, you're a busy chickie on a bunch of boards, including the State Advisory Board for Exceptional Children in Kentucky and the National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. But, Ashley, you are not all work, because I see you at the pool all summer. And you're not just at the pool in the summer. You have two sons who swim year-round, just like you do.
Yes.
And one of your sons happens to have Down syndrome. So this is personal to you.
Yes.
While you very much want to help families, you have experienced this. And because you've been a school teacher, you've experienced education on both sides, as a parent and as an educator. So what did I leave out? What else do you want to tell people about yourself?
I think you pretty much wrapped it up. This is a wild and crazy world, you know? We just keep it moving around here. I always tell people, Kim, I think your summary is really appropriate. I always tell people, when I sit at the IEP table representing families as an advocate in other states or as an attorney in Kentucky, I see things through the lens of a lot of people at that table. I also was a mediator, and so I think that's important, you know. And so, you know, because I was a teacher, because I am a parent, because I run businesses, I kind of understand administration. When I was 15 years old, I broke my back, so I have chronic pain. I have a disability myself. So, you know, I see things from the lens of a lot of different people at the IEP table, and I just have this collaborative spirit. And so, yeah, it's an honor to be a part of this community, mainly as a parent. That's the way I feel. And I'm just so grateful for the good work that you are doing specifically at church, but in communities as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. And I think too often we think we need to just do it on our own. And I know when we adopted our youngest at the age of 10, and she spoke about 10 words in English because she'd lived in Ukraine the first 10 years of her life, I tried to do it on my own. And a lot of the teachers were my friends, the administrators were my friends, because I'd lived here forever. And finally, somebody told me, you need an advocate. Yeah. And I started taking an advocate with me. And just as you said, it's somebody who you're looking at things through all the different lenses. I'm the mom, and it's hard for me to take my mom hat off.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know what my rights are. So I so appreciate you. But I'm going to dig in to belonging. You want every kid to belong. And I've met Jack, your son, who has Down syndrome, and he's extremely social.
Yes.
Very social. So tell me about that, because he's not typical.
Yeah. And he's also really anxious, which is a really weird combination. Anxiety and then this like social nature really collide sometimes. So, you know, but that's really kind of the foundation of our anxiety. When Jack was going to kindergarten, my school district is a very small independent school district in Kentucky. And, you know, they were really proud of the program that they had built, and they were encouraging us to consider a school that was not our home school, where Jack's kind of home base would be a self-contained special education classroom. People sometimes call them units. And I knew that there were a few things in Jack's profile that necessitated that he was in a far more inclusive environment for his education. So, number one, he is extremely social, and he knows when people are kind of like blowing smoke, when people aren't giving him their whole sense of appreciation. And that's really kind of that belonging piece. Like, he knows when he doesn't belong. He really has a good EQ, so he knows if somebody doesn't appreciate him. And I felt like Jack would know that his aptitude was being challenged, and that would not set him up for success because his EQ is so strong. Jack also is hilariously energetic and spicy, and I oftentimes say that ADHD impacts Jack far more significantly than Down syndrome does. From a medical standpoint, it's probably not true, but from a behavioral standpoint, it absolutely is true. And so, because his muscle tone and his intelligence and those things don't really necessarily, honestly, get in the way of school, particularly in a general education environment. Right. But his busyness does. And so I knew that the way that we raised him and the environments that we sent him to were really, really structured. And he would not do as well in a less structured classroom. He would do better in a classroom where most of the kids were doing similar or same things. And that's held true. He's in 8th grade. And he has done really, really well in general education classrooms. But yeah, there's kind of this like yin and yang of, you're really, really social. You want to be a part. And then you also have a lot of different factors that are kind of getting in the way of you being a part. Right. And it gets harder in middle school too, Kim, as I know you know, because middle schoolers do a really good job at being egotistical, which is what they're supposed to do. Right. And so Jack's peers are super, super kind. He always gets hellos. He's got secret handshakes with people and that kind of thing. But if Jack's body is too dysregulated for him to really engage in a conversation, because unfortunately, oftentimes those things almost come as an affront to him from an anxiety standpoint. It's like a demand avoidance. Then Jack doesn't do himself very many favors in promoting that socialization. And so the kids, they don't hang in there very long because they're like, well, I tried. I'm going to go on my merry way, which is completely fair.
I want to go back to something you said as far as he's aware. So he knows what you're thinking. And so tell me more about, as adults who are trying to be more inclusive and help every kid belong, what are some things that we might do that a kid like Jack would go, you are not my people? Or what might we do that really makes them calm down and feel like we're with them?
Yeah, to me, I think the big key is co-regulation, right? Like, Jack isn't supposed to fit into your world. Kids with disabilities aren't supposed to fit in your world. We're supposed to fit into theirs. And that's really, like, I remember, Kim, I think I told you this. I was in my old basement. It was an unfinished basement when we bought this house, and I walked downstairs. I well up when I think about this. I was switching laundry from one side to the other, washer to dryer. And I don't know what had happened that day, but I just had this epiphany. I was like, you know what? This is what it's all about. What it's all about is each other. We all have to fit into this idea of community. And Jack is teaching me that. Jack is teaching me that, the golden rule, great, do as to under others as you would have them do unto you. But the platinum rule is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. And so to me, if I'm trying to talk to a person that has, a neurodiversity or any kind of disability, I'm first going to calm myself and meet that person where they are. So a simple hello, increased wait time, genuine interest in what they're doing.
Talk about that increased wait time as far as we are waiting a longer period of time for them to respond, not rushing the response.
If it's a non-speaking person or someone that is verbal but isn't accessing their expressive language at the time, then, sometimes somebody really does just want a second to be able to come up with the words or organize what they want to say. Sometimes they're going to respond in a gesture or, kind of an invitation to play, like a physical invitation to play. And sometimes they are going to say get lost. And I want to give them time so that I can honor their request to interact with me. I'm terrible at this with my own kid. I'll tell you, if you see me at the pool and you say, hi, Jack, and he growls or he says nothing, I'm going to be like, Jack, Mrs. Botto said hello. And then I might even be like, Jack, I used to coach Mrs. Botto's kids in swimming. They swam in this very same pool like you. And go on and on and on, which is just making Jack more and more anxious. When in fact, what Jack wants is like, hey, Jack, that's my friend Kim. And then just wait and see how he does. It's very uncomfortable for us, which is why it's so hard.
Right. Now, you talked about co-regulation, and there's a lot of, and you've given some examples of it, but for a lot of people who are listening, they might not know what co-regulation is. So can you give a more in-depth definition and example of that?
Yeah. So see if I can do it without ChatGPT.
That's so helpful. So helpful.
Co-regulation is really about taking our bodies. So here's kind of an epiphany that I've had in raising Jack in the last 14 and a half years. I've had a lot of them. Our bodies and our minds and our souls are like three distinct things. And I think a big mistake that we make when we look at people, particularly people that exhibit problematic behaviors, is, which, by the way, what's even the definition of a problematic behavior? But, like an interfering behavior where it's getting in the way of something. Then a big mistake we make is like, that's you. You are dysregulated. And I'm constantly saying to Jack, tell your body to blah, blah, blah. Like my kids live on Ritalin. They probably don't need food. And if we're waiting for Ritalin to like hit the sweet spot, then, he might be climbing up the wrong side of the banister, or he really seriously has opened second-story windows and scared the wits out of me doing that. And I'll tell Jack, that's not you, buddy. Your brain knows that that's super dangerous, but your body gets really, really excited. Your body turns yellow. We use zones of regulation. Your body is busy. So with co-regulation, we are calming our bodies and our spirits so that we can then create a safe space for the child. And that's hard. I mean, you probably see I've got a little spot on my lip today. Jack woke up at 5:30. We brought him into our bedroom and he was funny. I mean, he was super happy and whatever, but I prioritize rest. So I was trying to get him to calm down to go back to sleep. And he tickled his dad and pulled his elbow back and got me in the mouth. Now, I need to create, elbow to lip, I'm fine. But I need to create a calm environment for him because I'm trying to get him to calm down. So I could have gone, Jack, you hit me in the mouth. Go to timeout.
Right.
But instead I was like, oh, buddy, that wasn't your fault, but I have to go downstairs and I have to get ice. And he did not follow me because I was able to stay so calm. You stay with dad in bed. You need to rest. You may get up in 15 minutes. I'm going to go down and get ice and I'll be right back. Any other reaction would have caused him to follow me.
Right.
And I think a big kind of piece to that, another tip, Kim, that I've learned is, there's lots of different kinds of attention. And one piece of attention, so there's like big attention, there's physical attention, there's loud attention, there's all these different things. But there's something called joint attention where you just sit and you like literally parallel play. You express interest in what the other person's doing. So Jack likes to play with Legos. And frankly, sometimes he's just moving Legos from one spot to another. So I'll sit down with him in his pile of Legos and I'll build something. Zero demand on him. I won't say, what are you building? You know what? You should build a park. What about a golf course? Golf course is all green. Would you like my green Lego? Nothing.
You're making my anxiety level go up a little bit. Just
yeah. And I'm an anxious person, so I can really do it to you. But instead I just sit next to him and I play. It is hard as all get out for me because I am anxious. I'm high energy. Frankly, I don't like it. But it helps him so much. And then I realize that I can increase the demand, right? I can then say, Jack, what are you building? And if I wait and if I hit it at the right time, I can get some interaction. I can make recommendations. I can help him to make progress if I first come at this like co-regulated even keel.
Right. And I will say, so you're his mother. It's taken you many years. You're continuing to learn this. And I think for us, like for me, when I see Jack at the pool or a kid, sometimes we have unrealistic expectations as far as, oh, he needs to greet me with a proper hello and ask me how I'm doing. And by me, so I can show the opposite of that would be for me to see him in, hi, Jack, how are you doing? Jack, how are you doing? Jack, are you having a fun day at the pool? And so I think one of the best things that we can do as we try to create spaces for everybody is just back off a little bit. And as you said, give space to respond. I mean, so many of the parents that I talk to have kids who are neurodivergent say they are not going to respond probably in the time frame that you expect. And so give them more space. And also you talked about us trying to learn in each other, live in each other's worlds, but really a kid who's autistic or has a developmental delay, they spend way more time trying to figure out how to live in our world than we do trying to figure out how to live in theirs. And your example of just sitting by him and parallel play and not trying to turn it into a teaching moment of let's sort by colors and let's see which thing's the tallest. I mean, that's us entering into their world. So that's,
yeah. And when you're a natural teacher, it's hard, right? Like I had nephews before I had kids, and man, we would take those blocks and we would stack them up and I'd count and I'd tell them the colors and all those things. I mean, I have a very language rich environment, but I always say that's why Jack has hearing aids so that he can catch the important stuff and then I can shut the heck up.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example of that at the pool is you and I have a shared friend, and this gentleman was a football coach, and he always, I don't know always, but eventually he started having some of the children that had disabilities work as managers for the team, and he really empowered them with autonomy and leadership and really great things. So he has grandkids at the pool a lot, and Jack will go over and he'll take a grandkid's toy. And this man, this grandfather, is so calm. He'll explain to his kids, that's another thing. You can't be afraid to talk about it. Like that little boy has Down syndrome. And, he might not have the words to tell you that he'd like to play with that, but we share our toys. So he's got it now and we need to share. And the message there is, and you can say this part later, you don't want to say it in front of Jack because he'll take advantage of it. Or a lot of kids that are kind of impulsive. But the message there is everybody gets treated differently. And if he takes your toy, then he should probably have it. Now, if I, as the caregiver, say, absolutely not, we're working on sharing, then honor that too, and there's like this balance. But my point is, this guy just leads his family in this way that's like, hey, man, what's up? You want to play? I'll play ball with you. And every single time we see him for the first time, Jack ends up in 20 minutes throwing a ball with him or something because this guy gives him space to interact, and then it just happens.
Well, and what he's doing too is he's entering into his world. And even though his grandchildren some of them quite a bit younger than Jack.
Yeah.
He's helping his grandkids understand differences. And I think that's another thing we as adults can get kind of confused on. Well, Jack's in middle school. He shouldn't be taking a toy from my 5-year-old grandchild. But
which is true.
Which is true. And we want to, I think the way you're saying that he explains it to his grandchildren is really helpful.
Yeah, it's super helpful. And adults have conversations like that too. Like there's plenty. Our pool is super diverse by way of ability, and it's so great. And then we adults will be like, well, I'm sorry that my kid did that, and please don't ever give him a squirt gun. Like that's just something. It's just not a lesson that I can make hold. And when you get it, right? So then I'll say to a kid, like, you are not, hey, listen, you can come play with us. I'll play ball with you. But first you have to go put on your swimmies, because their parents' rule is you must have your swimmies. Even if I, am like, well, I'll help you learn how to swim. Your parents' rule is you need your swimmies. I'm going to honor that, and I'll help, because we all fit in this world with boundaries, with abilities, with differences, all of it. So, I mean, it's really just about allowing space for everybody to be themselves and to meet everybody's needs in their unique way.
Yes. And I want to, I think that's very helpful for us who are interacting with people who are different. And I want to make a switch to church, because as you mentioned up at the top, I feel like the church can and should be the example of what it looks like to create a space for every kid, not to just come in and hang out, but for every kid to truly belong, find their people, be able to contribute. And when we were having coffee, you said something, and I wrote it down, and it made me cry. You said, church should be an easy place to go. I should not have to advocate, and my child should not have to work to access church.
Yeah.
And I know from the stories of your experiences that you have had to advocate, sometimes unsuccessfully, for Jack at church, and Jack has had to work really hard.
Yeah.
So tell me what hasn't worked and what has worked in the church setting.
We ended up looking at a lot of places at a mega church, I guess that's what you call it, like big church, that had a special needs room. I call these people inclusionistas. I'm not one of those people that is like, oh, everything they do has to be inclusive. There are things that Jack needs, and he needs a community of people with similar deficits and similar skills to work on and similar benefits. And so that was just beautiful. We had the best time in that community. They totally let him be him. The room was really kind of more like a sensory room than it was. He would check into the special needs room, and then he would go out to the inclusive, like with his inclusive class, first grade classroom or whatever. It was great. I mean, the volunteers were great. The volunteers really got him. They asked questions. Ultimately, they just made him feel safe and welcome and happy, and he got really good access to the Bible and to lessons and to morality and to God, and really, really good stuff. Ultimately, that community it felt like it wasn't right for the other three of us. And that's another thing where then you're like, okay, now we've got to balance what's right for Jack and what's right for us. And what I always say in our family is we go at the pace of the slowest person in the family. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of times that's me. But most of the time it's Jack. It's never Griffin, my oldest, and because he's pretty darn fast at everything. And so when something wasn't right for three of us, it just felt like we were kind of forcing it in order for Jack to have a home. And so that didn't work.
You talked about your experience where Jack really felt, you said the leaders asked a lot of questions. They really got him. So if somebody's listening and saying, what do I need to do to help a kid and a parent understand that I've got their kid? What did those leaders do? Well,
I think first of all, they had an environment that felt very safe. The environment was very sensory friendly. There were things for kids to alert themselves from a sensory standpoint and to calm themselves. Sensory seeking and sensory avoiding. So there was a trampoline, there were tunnels, there were swings, there were crash pads. I think there's even like a ladder with a slide. And then there were plenty of little educational things that they would be used to. So a lot of kids enjoy container play, take it out of this thing and put it in that thing, like take the coins and put them in that pig. There were bubbles, there was music. And when you walked in, here's a big key is if you can find teachers that have the spirit, they're trained in how to do it. So that room had, he's now a high school principal who just kind of led these younger kids in the beginning of our season there. And they were awesome. And then a couple of like mother-daughter teams or father-son teams where you could just tell that there was a spirit. Some siblings, you know, because they kind of get it. So there was this sense that the environment was right. And then, you know, like, is there anything we need to make him feel comfortable? What's he really like? Does he have any friends in this room? And fortunately for Jack, we had those things, and his preferences are pretty easy to describe. Another big thing, Kim, that I said to you is I knew that my number was never going to come up there. I could just sit and enjoy church. I never worried that they were going to call me. And I mean, maybe if he had thrown up or something, but that felt really good too. Like, he's got a person that has an eye on him.
So
and then
he had
afterwards,
a buddy with him.
Say it again.
Buddy with him.
He had pretty much one person with him. And they would mix it up, which I really liked, because then he developed relationships with a lot of people, and if somebody wasn't there, he still felt comfortable. They were very welcoming. Like, when he walked in, they'd be like, "Hey, buddy, what's up?" And, you know, some of his friends, like, he's got a friend that really likes hands. And every single person, when she would walk up, they would just be like, here are my hands, with totally nonverbal communication. Just like when she comes up to you, your hands go out because she wants to see your hands.
But you know, that is such a great example of, rather than tell her that is not what we do, we don't touch everybody's hands, what they did is they got to know her well enough to say, this is what she likes, and we are going, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a
germs,
a bad
maybe
thing. So basically, I mean, bottom line is that they got to know him. They provided a safe environment. You know, some people might be listening saying, "Oh my gosh, we can't afford all those fancy sensory toys." You don't need that, but you do need a safe place. And especially, I know you had mentioned with Jack the fact that the room locked. So you knew that he wasn't going to be able to sneak out.
Yeah, but it locked. It had a Dutch door, so it locked, but you didn't feel like you were locked in.
Right.
You know, the top door opened, and it also was the first room when you walked back to the kids area, which was like so welcome, because you know, you're used to, if you've got a kid that goes to a special education room, you're used to getting a lot of steps in because they're in the back of the school, in the basement, behind the drawing room, and then they've got to walk all the way across the school to the sensory gym, where, you know, sometimes it's in another building, but that's just where they had to have it because it was an afterthought. This was like, nope, we want you here, which was really cool.
Yeah, location matters. What would you say, what helps Jack as far as with his peers, especially now being in middle school, which peer relationships can be challenging for every kid?
Yes.
So for parents who have middle schoolers, what are things that they can do to better include people who are different? Oh, and you know, I also want to talk about one of the things you said was with Jack, weirdness is a fact. And I was actually offended I was offended for Jack that you would call him weird. I mean, remember, I'm like, wait a minute. But talk more about the weirdness and how other people can include him.
Yeah, I always say beautifully weird, so I hope I said beautifully weird.
That's good.
But
that's good.
You know, when you're talking to people that get it, you can talk. You can mince words a little bit. I think the biggest thing that parents can do is to keep the kid on the radar of your kids, right? Like, you know, so Jack has never ever been invited to walk into a dance or a kickoff party or a school event with other kids. COVID really, really impacted that. He had been to a sleepover in February of 2020. And then it was like hard stop, you know, because then they also became pubescent kids. But he has a few buddies that will So it would be great if the parent said, hey, I wonder if Jack has somebody to go with. And then to say, all you have to do is walk into the dance with him, buddy. Like, there are adults that are going to help him play the games and avoid the music and that kind of thing. But like, imagine if you were walking into the dance by yourself. That would be really nice. He does have a cousin that will meets him, that plays with him at the dance. You know, we'll do some stuff with his buddies, and his buddies have been pretty great. But like, just that little limited thing would be awesome. He also has a couple of friends that really appreciate him. And they'll like drop off probably around this time at Christmas time. We'll get like a bag of random stuff that Jack likes, like the weird stuff, you know, like somebody will wrap up a rope and put it on our front porch and be like, what's up, Jack? A $5 Nerf gun. Hey, Jack, thinking about you. Merry Christmas. So that then, and like, here's the thing, and I'm going to give you an example. The thing is that Jack then feels like he's a part of something. That's right for Jack. Other people might be like, well, now you like poked me and you were like, hey, I'm here. And now you're gone again. Inviting them to coffee, inviting them like to your house to hang out for an hour, whatever it is, like low impact things on you can make a high impact on them. And the other thing I always say is we have to think about it from their perspective. So for Jack, like behavior is going to spiral fairly quickly. And so you've got to have a nice timeline and a nice structure. But I always think about this year that he wanted a bouncy house with a basketball hoop in it. And he wanted it to be an obstacle course. So, you know, I was like, okay, fine. I'll rent the $300 bouncy house. It took up our entire backyard. And of course, his birthday's in July. It was a jillion degrees outside. And so he had 12 little boys over here. And literally the bouncy house was like a water cooler. They sat and like sweated and drank water. And then they ended up in my basement. And I was kind of disappointed because I was like, gosh, that was his like dream to have those kids there in the bouncy house. He still talks about his bouncy house party. To him, that was incredible. They each did the obstacle course like twice. So like little bitty things can have these huge, huge impacts. And it's not about us. It's not about the $300. It's not about the driving in places and everything else. It's about what he perceived and what he experienced.
Right. And I'll say, I mean, you said a couple things in there. One, just invite. Eric Carter did research where 51% of adolescents with autism, adolescent autistics, have never, ever been invited to a football game, a birthday party, nothing ever. And so just invite and set up expectations like you talk about as far as, hey, you're going to talk about it beforehand. You're going to, he's going to know that he's included in the group. And then once you get in, you do not have to be by his side every minute.
Yes, please.
Figure out, and you need to figure out what it looks like for that particular kid, because what Jack needs might be different than what somebody else needs. So yeah, I think that's really helpful. And giving him a rope. I had a friend who her 16-year-old son is autistic, and he wanted a swing set for his 16th birthday, and she's like, wow, like his friends are getting cars, but. To your point about the bounce house, that's what that child wanted. And we can't impose what we think is cool and the right thing. We need to better understand them. But Ashley, it's been so great talking to you. I want to do a couple just really rapid fire questions, okay? Which I know you can do this because you kind of live your life in rapid fire. Okay, you need to increase your energy. What song are you going to listen to?
How about Dixie Chicks, Some Days You Gotta Dance?
Okay, your most memorable gift from your childhood.
My parents did a scavenger hunt at the end of Christmas. Once Christmas got kind of methodical, less exciting. So we would do a scavenger hunt. Our first scavenger hunt, I got Teddy Ruxpin.
Oh. Nice. That's your parents are fun people.
I never believed I would get a Teddy Ruxpin. It was amazing. It was like this, it was like this really heavy bear that talked.
Yeah, That's a high quality gift. Most recent book you've enjoyed?
Right now, I'm really enjoying the book I'm reading now. It is Dr. Mary Claire Haver's book on menopause. I never know the titles. I actually had a book rut, but the best fiction book that I've read recently, I really loved Verity by Colleen Hoover.
Nice. Okay. Who's had a big impact on your life?
I've had 3 mentors professionally that have had a big impact on my life. My dad, who is very similar to me, although we practice law very differently. My dad's former law partner, a guy by the name of Ed Tranter, who practiced law very different. He pulverized cases. And a guy by the name of Mott Plummer, who is actually the father of one of my high school classmates, but I had the honor of working with Mott at the child support office early in my career. And Mott was just this really reasonable, even keel guy that was such a consummate professional. And they kind of meshed into the way that I practice law.
Well, and how amazing that you had 3 people that you can just very quickly identify as having an impact in your life. And as I think about a lot of our kids who are neurodivergent, they're disabled, a lot of them, that's a big thing that they're lacking, is somebody other than their parents to build into them. So I would say, if you're listening and you know a family who has a kid with differences, as an adult, work with the parents on this, of course, but go toss ball with them in the front yard. Come into their house and watch their favorite TV show with them, because that is a huge thing. They have people who are paid to be with them, but they don't have as many people who just want to be with them and build into them. Okay,
yeah, if you want to do something nice to us too, because caregiving is really, really tiring. It's fairly expensive. And it's extremely isolating. By Saturday night, the last thing I want to do is put on pants with a button and go have fun at a Christmas party. I want to have a, coffee drink and go to sleep.
No kidding. Okay, this is the last one. Finish this thought. Every child
belongs.
Every child belongs. Yes, they do. What a great, that would be a great title for a podcast. Ashley, thank you so much. Is there something that I didn't ask you, or something you want to leave the listeners with before we sign off?
The only thing, in my law practice and advocacy practice that I really encourage people to do is to communicate. So much about how we feel as caregivers, what our kids need at school, in their communities, at home, in your families, wherever it is. We don't know unless we know. And so there are ways to communicate that are effective, that are efficient, that really help to provoke empathy and help people understand what you need. And it feels very uncomfortable, but I always say Jack has put me in the most uncomfortable places, and I've only grown from those. And so, we have to communicate, and we have to learn how to do it in a way that is comfortable to us, but also helps our kids.
Yeah. And for someone who doesn't have a child, who's trying to get to know somebody and better support them, I would say just being curious and not making assumptions. Don't assume that you know what is best for you, Ashley, or what is best for your child.
Right.
And just go in with an open mind.
Yeah, totally. We do a lot with Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and anytime we go do something for them, an interview or a photo shoot or whatever, they say to us, what does Jack need? What would make the experience better? Yeah. And then as a caregiver, I don't hesitate to say, well, it would be pretty helpful if you had some Sprite, and, he really likes this one doctor, and that kind of thing, because the more that I can give them to help him succeed, the better.
Right. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. Always fun spending time with you.
You too, Kim.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.